Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dynamic Torah podcast. This is episode 11, and this episode is a special one because it focuses and highlights the significance of Tisha BeAv, what the day means. But more importantly, we dig deep into the history of the Romans and the Jews leading up to the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. We look at books such as History of the Jews. We look at the works of Josephus in order to uncover more about what was really going on during the time leading up to the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. We discuss what is Sinat Chinam, what does it really mean? How do we get to a place where we feel like there's baseless hatred between us and our fellow Jew? And we also discuss the antidote to it. With that, thank you again for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share this video with anyone who would enjoy the content and will find meaning from it, and enjoy this episode. Episode 11, special episode, very important topic related to Tisha BeAv, and I think it's something that can really affect us on a personal and a collective level, whether it's in our local community, whether it's at Am Yisrael at large. So take it away.
We're not giving the full picture at all, about the situation that was going on in the Second Temple during the 1st century BCE and the 1st century CE. The Chachamim take very, very little information that was orally available to them, and they patch up here and there certain things in the Talmud, in some Midrashim, about what was going on during this 200-year period after the Hashmonaim. Okay? The Chachamim were not that much interested in history, the way we understand history today. The ancients were not either. Right? It was pretty much, histories was just pretty much was orally known. Orally known. It wasn't so much about facts. It was about recalling something, maybe accurate, maybe semi-accurate, sometimes not accurate at all. But from the Jewish perspective, we try to say, what does this mean to us? That was more the strategy of the sages in the Talmud, when they would recall past events.
So deriving meaning from historical events.
Yeah, but not necessarily historical per se, it's ahistorical, I'll call it.
Okay.
It's something that has to do with history, but it's not history like we're used today. It's factual, okay? Or trying to go back and figuring out how everything exactly happened.
Okay.
That strategy began in the 1700s in Europe. And in essence, it's impossible. It's impossible to know exactly what happened, because the ancients didn't write this way in the first place. Mm-hmm. For example, you have the histories of early Egypt before they were conquered by the Greeks. So whatever they have pretty much has to do with the annals of the kings, that had to do with the victories of the kings, as well as certain things that had to do with magic. But from the point of view of events, it was really battles of the kings or diplomacy of the kings and things like this. And very often it's exaggerated, very much exaggerated, because that is how they wanted the public to perceive their leaders as the greatness of who they were. The same thing with the Babylonians at that time. Again, I'm talking early. Mesopotamians, the Assyrians. We have this, yeah. Even in the Tanakh, there's a principle in rabbinics, in the Talmud, that when it comes to the narratives of the Tanakh, they say sometimes Dibarat Torah Bilshon Havai. The Torah speaks in hyperbole. Sometimes the Torah, including the Tanakh, it exaggerates. This was the style. It's not that it's lying. No, it's just presenting a narrative in order to capture the mind, capture the audience.
It's embellishing.
Yes. Think of it like theater. Think of it like movies of today. Right? Yes, By the way, every story should have a climax. Right? Because if you're going to tell me the punchline from the beginning, there's no story anymore. Mm-hmm. But if you take me on a journey leading me to the climax, all right, and throughout this journey leading to the climax, yes, you're going to add certain things, you're going to add a little exaggeration, you're going to add some more drama. It just makes it more interesting. It makes it more, what happened, how did this happen? And then you lead to the climax. That sometimes the climax is even exaggerated. And that's fine, it's okay. As long as we understand that these are narratives, not trying to prove a point, but trying to convey a message. To convey messages. And midrashim, by the way, in the Talmud, Midrash Agadah, are written in that style. They're not recalling historical facts. They are composing narratives as if they can bring the past to the present. That's what they're doing. In order to gain more meaning through their lens. That was this time.
Right.
Okay. Now, the period that we're going to be talking about during this podcast really is, again, 1st century BCE, first century CE of the Common Era. After the Hashmonaim, around the year 162, before the Common Era, which they were able to reclaim the territory of Judea in particular, reclaim the temple, dedicated Hanukkah, that whole Hanukkah thing. And we have a lot of that information, of course, from the book of the Maccabees, which is really the source of really what was going on during that time, because the Talmud has maybe 3 sentences. It's very, very little.
Right, and that's deliberate.
On purpose.
Right.
Okay. The Hashmonaim dynasty, which was viewed as both a kingdom and a priesthood. Okay? They wielded enormous power. They controlled both branches, the executive and the Kehuna branch. Right? And although initially the Jewish people were very thankful for what they did, because they were the ones who were the Zealots, the Kanaim, they were the ones who said, we're going to fight these Greeks. Yeah. We're not going to tolerate what they're doing. And most people succumb. Most people just say, I'm happy with my little family, my little work, and whatever beyond that, I don't want to get involved. Till today, very, very common. It's very, very common. Okay? And then you have these groups of people that suddenly emerge and start revolutions and start things. Sometimes justified, sometimes not justified. There's nothing's changed really when it comes to that.
Sure.
And things initially were fine, but then ultimately, unfortunately, the Hashmonaim dynasty became more Hellenized and they became somewhat tyrannical also. That's a separate story. Judea, Yehuda, was a huge territory. It was mainly central Israel, okay, including the coast. Yerushalayim was part of it. What's unique about Judea? Well, you have beautiful areas where agriculture can flourish. Right? Olive trees, and particularly wine.
Grapes.
Yeah. Very, very important. Right? Both of these things are commodities to trade. And since you have that Judean area that's near also part of the sea that had ports, so trade was huge in this territory, very, very big. Yerushalayim was a different story because you're now talking about highland. Yehuda was always lowland. And what's unique about lowland is that when you have rain and dew, water comes down from highland to lowland, hence you can now water the whole area, and that's where you have this beautiful abundance of greenery and agriculture and farming. When Rome marched through the Middle East and was able to conquer and take over pretty much all the territories that were under Greece, Israel was part of it. Okay. What did Rome mainly want? Dominion and power. Through what? Taxes. It's about taxation. And they wanted to be able to take advantage of using the people for its own wealth. That was pretty much it. Rome was always looking to build its power, very often diplomatically, and sometimes through, subjugation. It did this.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, Rome was okay with Judea and the Judeans running their own territory, have their own autonomy, just recognize allegiance to the emperor, trade, pay some taxes, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and that was pretty much it.
So similar to how when Alexander the Great came to Eretz Israel as well, it was a similar policy pre-Maccabean, where it came in just, we'll respect you, you guys will do your thing, just respect our dominion and our power, trade with us, pay taxes, but mind your business, and
Yes.
we'll mind our business
Yeah.
too. Okay, so that was the initial policy.
That
of
was the
Rome.
initial policy,
Okay.
because they understood that if things are peaceful among the natives and all that, then things are fine. They understood war is not productive. They understood, they understood war, and war, everybody loses something.
It's so fun you're saying that, because they're considered one of the most bloodthirsty
Yeah.
empires that ever walked the face of the earth.
When it came to war, they were ruthless, it's true, but they understood that it's necessary in order to defend its borders, in order to expand its territory. And at the same time, they wanted there to be peace. Hence, they appointed many governors all over the regions who they thought, the emperor thought, that they'll be able to deal with the people more diplomatically. Sometimes it works, sometimes it didn't work, because the governor was hungry for power and abused the people.
Yeah.
And it's funny that the citizenry, very often when this happened, they would send delegations to the emperor telling them this is what's going on. And if it was true, the emperor would relieve the person, sometimes jail them for saying, why are you doing this to my subjects?
Right, and we
I
have
didn't put for that.
Right, we have stories in the Talmud of that, where you have Chachamim going to Rome, right, to plead their case
Yeah, on behalf.
of Am Yisrael.
And,
Right.
and again, it's the Judeans usually. Right?
Interesting.
So not only us, but also others.
Of course.
Also others.
Right.
Okay? Because again, we're dealing with humans. Humans have the choice of doing good and evil. It doesn't matter in what position you are. It doesn't matter what category you are. It doesn't matter what your finances are. We all have this. So you had people who were very good, and who were good, who allowed. Keep what you make. Just give a little portion. That's fine, but not to go and to usurp power over them and to abuse them and to loot them. Or allow, this was a trick that some of these governors used to do. When they would want to weaken the citizenry, and overtake them without them doing this directly, they would connive in ways that made believe that one side is against the other side.
So it cause a coup or internal rift.
Among them. They would put certain people in order to start
Plants.
in order to start this fervor, and then the people among themselves would start fighting, and then we need to now come in to make sure things are all right, and guess what? We're going to overtax you now. We're going to take property. That was one of the strategies of some of these governors that they did. Okay? Also in Judea. Okay? I don't want to say that this only happened in Judea. No, this happened in all different provinces and different towns, depending on who the governor was of the cities. Okay. Now going back to Judea, at one point, something changed.
So what book are you reading from?
I'm reading from a book called The History of the Jews. This is absolutely a masterpiece of Jewish history that was written in the 1800s by one of the great Jewish historians who was loyal to tradition, by the way. Loyal to tradition, Heinrich Graetz. Right?
Mhm.
His books are available online, you can get them, depending on what edition. Could be more or less
Right.
pricey.
Yeah.
But really, what he did was collect any and every information possible that was extant during his time, including manuscripts, and provide a complete version of Jewish history from the time of Genesis up until his time. We're talking about the 1800s. It is one of the most complete histories. The beautiful part of it is that he writes this as a story, as a narrative, which is really beautiful. Of course, it was written in German.
Mhm.
I'm sure in German it's even more eloquent than the English because it was translated, but it contains enormous amount of information, but in more of a storytelling way, where it's hard to put it down.
It's compelling.
Very,
Mm.
yeah, but very accurate.
Yeah.
He was a rabbinical student, not only a scholar, a professor. So he's bringing you the regular histories that was known, but also the traditional rabbinic histories, the biblical at the same time. He was very familiar with all the writings of rabbinics, by the way.
Yeah.
All right. He writes over here that changes were going on internally among the Jewish people, in particular in Judea. Right? He says, another change also originated with the Roman occupation of Judea. All public documents, this is very interesting, all public documents, deeds of divorce, etc., were now to be dated according to the year of the reign of the Roman emperor and not as formerly that of the Judean rulers.
So this was when the Romans came in. This was a part of their like imposing.
But it's something that unfolded. It took
Okay.
time. It took time to happen. Now keep in mind, we are a people that we have a very ancient tradition of who we are.
Mhm.
We have our one God. We have our own ways of rituals, etc. Again, we were not a new people. We were not an uneducated people. So suddenly, this change happens. So basically, what are you saying? You're not recognizing the rulers of Judea? We ruled our own land. This is our land. We were rulers of this. You guys are foreigners. Why suddenly this change that you're telling us to change documents, again, legal documents, to the year of the emperor? Why? Okay?
Okay.
From the point of view of Rome, it makes total sense. We want to have consensus.
It's consistency.
Yeah.
Easy. Yeah.
It's not for them. It wasn't something that,
It's not personal.
it's not personal. It wasn't something that we're going to offend them. No, this was a standard policy.
It's business.
Yeah. In other words, if you want us to also look at your legal documents, they have to be dated according to the people who are ruling here.
Okay.
Right? It's as if I'm going to tell my banker, he's writing me, a financial document I'm about to sign. No, this date, what? July 21, 2026. I don't recognize this. I want you to put the Hebrew date. What are you talking about? It would be invalid in a court of law in America. Okay.
Yeah.
There were other things that the Romans also wanted to appoint certain high priests, but that is also in the course of time it happened. It didn't happen initially.
Right. And wasn't it also, maybe you'll get to this afterwards, while the Hashmonaim, when the rifts started happening during their time, one of the brothers, or one of the descendants, were the ones who brought the Romans in order to, have their backing in order to solidify his own power, so that,
Oh,
right?
yeah, yes.
So
We're going to get to that.
okay, we'll get to
But
it. Fine.
not at that particular story, but we're going to get to situations that sometimes there was collaboration.
Right.
Internal collaboration with our enemy against one of the factions of a Jewish faction within us. It's a problem.
Okay.
One of the things that the Judeans really got upset about. And this is what triggered a lot of like resentment with Rome from the beginning, is that Rome wanted to claim Judea as its own, making it saying this is not anymore a Judean province, this is a Roman province. And how did they want to do this? That their tactics. They would say, we want to do a census. What was the real purpose of census in ancient history?
I mean, it's consolidation of power. Well, one argument you can make is when you have a census, then you'll have a feel for how you can build up your military in order to send troops out to do other campaigns, in order to expand borders even further. It could also affect policy of taxation.
That's the main thing.
Commerce.
Tax. The main reason why they would do census is in order to tax the people. So they know exactly how many people they are. Of course, of working age, not minors, not women, and not elderly. And basically, they had a formula. There was a formula. If there's X amount of adult males working, then therefore there has to be a formula of how much the taxes should be every single year. And when that was done, they would appoint one or two people to be the tax collectors. One who was the local one, and one who would take the local and give it to the governor or directly to Rome sometimes, depending on the amounts.
Yeah.
Okay, and they were hated by the people.
I can imagine. I mean, so I'll read something that I just pulled up, Claude also. I wrote, why did the Romans perform a census? The Roman census, so census comes from the verb censere, to assess or to estimate, to serve several interlocking purposes, mostly tied to governance, taxation, and military organization. So taxation was the number one reason. Yeah. Second reason was military conscription. Third, political organization, citizenship and legal status verification, administrative control over conquered territories. But I didn't know this, that censere means to assess. So
they resented the fact that Rome wanted to do this. Now, the high priest of the time calmed the people down, and he tried to persuade them, no, that's not the real reason. It's not because they want to overtax you or this and this and that. It's more for them to do the numbers. They didn't believe him. Okay? They didn't believe it. So already things started to stir. Things started to stir. Okay. The second thing started to stir with this whole thing that I told you about the calendar, about the date. Okay?
Yeah.
And there was always a remnant, a small remnant of people that had the same ideology as the Hashmonaim. Of what? We're going to rebel.
We're going to fight.
They were called Zealots. In Hebrew, they were called the Kanaim. Okay? Now, just to give you a little bit of what other things going on are there, like major factions going on. So we get a bigger picture. They were the Pharisees, the Perushim. Okay? Those, we'll call them eventually the heirs or the leaders of rabbinic Judaism, oral tradition. Okay? The Torah and the mitzvot, based on interpretation, halacha, etc., all that. They had a lot of power. They had enormous sway over the people. Okay? The second ones were the Sadducees, the Tzedukim. This was the class of priests, okay, and the old class of the priests that also had sway among the people, but not as strong as the Pharisees who did later on. There was always clashes between the two when it came to political ideology, and when it came to halachic standards. In the Mishnah, I can't remember what Masekhet, there's conversation between the two. I think it's maybe Masekhet Yadayim, if I'm not mistaken. There's conversation between the two groups. Clearly, it's taking place either in the court, the Supreme Court, or in the halls of the Beit HaMikdash, pretty much. And they go back and forth.
Yeah, it was Yadayim, by the way.
Oh, good.
Pulled it up.
My memory is good somehow. Masekhet Yadayim. Okay.
Specifically in the final section, chapter 4,
yeah.
Mishnayot 6 through 8.
It's really a wonderful thing to read. And if you read it also with the Prush Rambam, he expands on it even more. But it's fascinating because we had differences of opinion, clearly, not only among the Chachamim, but also outside the different sects. The third sect that was also known, it was small. It was about 4,000 people. They were called the Essenes. Okay, who were they? They were mainly men who chose to live a life that was totally non-materialistic at all. Right? Very, very, very things that are extreme ways of life, including Judaism. Very. To the point where on Shabbat, they wouldn't even move their bowels.
Wow.
Because they would consider that's not resting, that's like constraining your body. I mean, ad kedei kach, this is wild. And another thing that they did is that they would only wear one garment as long as possible, until it became so raggedy that it doesn't cover them anymore. Right? They were nothing with, all their possessions were in like one bowl. Basically, a communist, socialist type of living.
Esoteric.
They share everything.
Very esoteric, right?
Very.
Were
Anybody who wanted to be part of this group had a 3-year probation to make sure that they can trust him. Women and children were not allowed. Again, and they lived in the Judean desert somewhere. Very, very, very extreme.
Were they the ones who eventually? They weren't the ones who had the Qumran scrolls and the Dead Sea Scrolls, were they? Or
Part
was
of
it
this
like,
group.
or was it like a faction that split off of them?
Yeah,
even
them and a part of this group. Yeah.
Okay.
Remnants. Yeah.
Okay.
And the fourth ones were the Kanaim, the Zealots, who had a lot of sway over who in particular? The young people, the young men.
Why?
Why? Because young people don't want to be dominated and controlled by anybody. Going to rebel. The older people, more wise, listen, I got a lot to lose. I got a family,
Sure.
I got my property, I got my money. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
Take it easy.
Yeah.
Don't be hotheads. Usually are the young people.
Mm-hmm.
They got very little, if anything, to lose.
Yeah.
Armies are mainly what? Soldiers are mainly what? 18, 19-year-old kids.
Yeah.
Right? It's interesting. Okay, and there was a group of people. They weren't really per se like recognized as group. They were bandits.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
These were lawless people. They were also called the Sicarii. Okay.
Okay.
Because the word sica in Latin means dagger.
Mm-hmm.
What they would do, sometimes, again, they were mercenaries. When the Zealots needed some help to do some really nasty things and all that, they would hire them. And other factions, other, personal. I have vengeance over this guy. They would hire them. Again, they were mercenaries, both personal as well as group mercenaries to do biddings of some people.
Okay.
What would they do in particular? They would target and assassin mainly wealthy people, people who had high status when it came to representation.
So government officials.
Government officials, senators sometimes, tax collectors. Yeah. And anyone who hired them to assassinate people that was against the group. For example, the Zealots would hire them often in order to kill people who didn't agree with their cause. Anyone, for example, who spoke out or had influence to say that let's not fight Rome, let's deal with them diplomatically, they would send them, kill them. Again, these were Jews. These were Jewish people. What? Yes, there's Jewish criminals still today. They exist.
Yeah, I mean, usually you think Jewish criminals are getting picked up for tax evasion, fraud, forgeries.
They were bad guys. They were bad guys. Some sort of a mafia, we call them.
Yeah.
And again, they were lawless.
Okay.
And people didn't know who they were because they would dress up in disguise just like anybody else in public.
Right.
And then since they had these little daggers, they knew exactly where to stab the person and just walk away like nothing happened.
Jeez.
Nothing happened.
Jeez.
Okay? They were also known in the time of the Bar Kokhba revolt. They were the ones who also would mingle around the public circle and kill Romans who they believed, right, were traitors to Israel or were can't be trusted among the Jews.
Okay.
Yeah. Soldiers, like let's say they're stationed somewhere, they would kill them also. So it was, again, it's not that they had an ideology per se. They're mercenaries. You hire us, we'll do it.
Yeah, we'll take care of it.
We'll take care of it.
We'll take care of it. Yeah. Yeah, they're the hitmen.
Yeah, exactly. The hitmen. But that's why Sicario is assassins. Okay. Let me see. The Zealots were much annoyed at this innovation about the change of the name on the document, if it's the Roman date or the Judean date. They accused the more moderate Pharisees who had yielded to it of indifference in matters of religion. How could such an ignominy be perpetuated as to write the words, this is fascinating, is to write the words, according to the laws of Moshe in Israel, the usual formula in the separation deeds, right? Kedat Moshe Israel, next to the name of a heathen ruler, and thus permit the holy name of the greatest prophet to be placed by the side of the name of the heathen ruler. Listen, it's a great argument.
It's a fair argument to make.
Ideologically,
Yes.
it's a, wow. How can, and who agreed to it? The Pharisees, the rabbinites.
Did they?
Yes.
I thought they were more diplomatic, though.
No. They are being
Oh,
diplomatic.
they agreed to the change in the
Yes.
documentation. Oh.
The Zealots, the Canaim said, what? We don't accept this.
Okay, I understand. Yeah. It's a big deal. I mean, on ideological principles, strictly, it's a slap in the face. But I think when you're viewing it from such a narrow lens, you miss the bigger picture of what's right. So what are you willing to say? What are you willing to now
Give up.
give
What's
up?
next?
What's the cost?
What's next?
Yeah.
What's next to give up?
Right. It's a slippery slope. From one angle, they just view it as it's fine. This is just a legal document that we needed to just add the date. Whereas the Zealots were viewing it as this is a slippery slope. It's only going to get worse. We're going to start assimilating with them, and we're going to lose our entire identity.
Well, I don't think they were. I don't think that they viewed it that much that we're losing our entire identity. But they're saying it was more. It was more as of who is our ruler. For them, for the Zealots, God is the ruler of all, and we don't accept any human ruler. Okay. Whereas the Pharisees, the Chachamim, said, of course God is the ruler, but at the same time, there are other rulers of the world, and it happens to be that we're under this ruler. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
And let's deal, diplomatically, whatever it is, to the point that on a daily basis they would offer a sacrifice in the temple, on behalf of the emperor, in the Beit HaMikdash. They did this because we spoke about this in the past. According to paganism and idolatry, if you have your God, great. So I need to, of course, appease my God with certain sacrifices. So my God is going to be nice to me, great. However, if I'm in a territory and I'm a foreigner, hence Rome were foreigners in Judea and Israel, they also requested, it was known, that in order so that the God of the land, who happens to be the God of the Judeans, is not going to bring upon evil or pestilence or bad stuff upon the Romans. So therefore, a sacrifice was offered on the emperor's behalf to the God of Israel. So the God of Israel is appeased. He's okay.
Okay.
That's the psyche. That's how we have to understand it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. Okay.
Let me see if there's something more. There's a lot of things going on. By the way, the amount of history that Graetz brings, as well as Josephus has, it's enormous. There's so much details. It's you really need to study it thoroughly to really appreciate all the little different pieces that are going on. All right? Again,
Yeah.
we're not taught this in schools, unfortunately.
No.
We're not taught this in the Jewish schools of what was going on. No, we're just the Beit was destroyed, this happened, the Romans were bad, blah, 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 blah. And that's it? Really? Are you kidding me? No, no, no. It is way more complicated than how it's presented.
Right. I wanted to also point out the fact that machloket between the Tzaddukim or the Zealots and the Pharisees, it's in Masekhet Yadayim. It's the last Mishnah Masekhet Yadayim.
I mentioned that, yeah.
Right.
It's
So
there.
that exact point, it's not like it's actually recorded as a machlok between the Tzaddukim and the Perushim about the issue with the date and putting the date on the documents. Yeah. And it's fascinating. I mean, how would you say it? It opens your eyes up to exploring and saying, okay, there's got to be more to the context here.
Yeah.
Because for the Romans just to say, or for this, I'll just read the English translation. A Galilean means that I complain against you Pharisees that you write the documents of the ruler and the name of Moses together in a divorce document. It's like, okay, well, what does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with Masekhet Yadayim, right?
Tuman Tahara, by the way.
Tuman Tahara, right? But it's so funny that it's included in the Mishnah as a machloket there, right? So anyway, so you keep going. Sorry for that tangent.
So, another thing when it had to do with the Zealots. The Zealots, by the way, since they were so engulfed and hunky-dory about their ideology, often they behaved very cruel and immoral towards the people themselves. You're either with us or you're against us. That's how they saw it. Between the Chachamim and the Sadducees, for example, right? Between Pharisees and Sadducees, there were major ideological arguments, but they never ever, it never came down to blows with each other. It never came down to, we want to forget killing, that we're going to club you. We're never, no, it was strictly dialogue. With the Zealots and the Canaim, they started to resort to violence against their own people. This thing of this zealotry lasted for decades, to the point where even during the destruction of the Second Temple, this was still going on within the temple itself. Anyone who wanted to defect and say, I'm going to Rome, so in other words, I'm going to go and give up to Rome. No. They killed that person. They killed thousands of people who wanted to go over to Rome and say, we had enough. We're starving to death, literally. They would kill them and throw their bodies over the temple, mounds.
So that massive influence.
Oh, big time.
How weren't they put down though, or how weren't they curbed?
Because they had a very high hand when it came to violence. They were very well trained in military. That's why.
So the Romans couldn't even put them down.
It was very difficult. By the way, the Romans had a very hard time dealing with these zealots and again, and other groups that they joined forces with. Not the Pharisees, not the Sadducees, not the Essenes. I mean, no. They were a force to contend with for decades.
Right. It was guerrilla warfare with them also.
Absolutely.
So they just came out of
Trickery,
nowhere.
it was constant, and it was constant.
Yeah.
Since Rome was used to trained, standard military.
Yeah.
Very, very disciplined.
Rigid.
Very, very rigid.
Strategy.
These guys were loose. They were wild and loose.
Right.
They didn't understand.
Right.
They said, we can't fight them this way. We don't know what to do.
I mean, it reminds me kind of, it parallels like America going to Vietnam, right? And fighting the Viet Cong, where hidden everywhere. You didn't know when to expect them or how
No
they're going to
rules
just
of
pop
war.
up. There are no rules of war.
No.
They had no regard. And America being the greatest military power on the
Doesn't mean
planet
anything.
at that time, they were crippled.
Yeah.
They couldn't fight it.
Put the thing on pause for a second. Yeah.
All right, we're back.
So continuing with these different factions. Now within all these factions, by the way, you had sub-factions. Okay? Sub-factions. You had the Hillelites, the students of Hillel, and then you had the Shammaites, the students of Shammai. Academy Hillel, Academy Shammai.
Right.
Now the disagreements are usually known to be mainly law, legal. Yeah, and there's hundreds of them in the Mishnah all over the place. Okay, disagreed, all different perspective. But what people don't also realize is that one of their key differences that they disagreed on is politics. The Hillelites, because they adhere to the sayings and teachings of their mentor Hillel, were more peaceful. Let's not be hotheads. Let's know how to maneuver with Rome, etc. The Shammaites were more hotheads. Since Shammai, it was known to be also very strict, very rigid, uncompromising usually, they were of that type of same character. They said, no, we want to fight against them. We have to understand that within a 200 to 250 year period, within the Jewish people, there was enormous infighting. Ideological, dialogue, violence, but very bad violence among each other. Enemies that wanted to tear each other apart. Mini civil battles. Again, civil war. Mini, not major, but these things happened. Unfortunately, when these things brew up every so often, of course, it devastated the areas that they were in particular in Jerusalem as well as in certain provinces in Judea. And the ones who usually had the upper hand were the more violent ones, and they would coerce others, say, are you with us or you're not? Again, the Zealots, the Kanaim.
Did they align more with one faction over another, meaning the Pharisees or the Sadducees?
No, they were their own.
They were their own.
They were their own. They might have things that agreed with them ideologically when it comes to ritual and law, but politically, no, we're our own. What's interesting is this is like a remnant of the Hashmonaim, if you think about it, that ideology. We're going to fight Greece. We're not going to back down. So in a sense, it's like a continuation of that.
Yeah.
And later on, after the destruction of the Second Temple, that same spirit still continued up until Bar Kokhba, until the year 135, when it was completely finished. It was crushed, and it did not, appear again.
Right.
It didn't.
Right. That was the last. That was the last stand for.
That's
for
it. It
Amish
was
at
over.
that time. Yeah.
Because the devastation that Rome inflicted upon the Judeans was so enormous that they say it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people were massacred. Hundreds of thousands. The number is at least 750,000. I mean, what's our population? It's a joke. One of the points that Josephus, as well as other historians, including Graetz, convey and they show this inner fighting led to us being destroyed. We started it. We began. And usually, you hear the saying, a person themselves is their own worst enemy. Yes. Our history shows very clear from the time of Moshe, And the Torah says this, right? You will self-destruct if you're not united. You're destroyers and you're annihilators. They're going to come out from you. Yeah. I want to say something that I've said for a good year and a half before October 7th. I was saying this to friends as well. I was saying this to all my high school students on a regular basis, and when I would have talks with them and tefillah and all that. For a good year and a half, when Israel was going through the whole judicial reform thing, initially it was very small, and then suddenly you had masses of hundreds, thousands and tens of thousands of people. And up to one time they had 500,000 people, and the hatred, it wasn't about the judicial reform anymore. It's about who can I hate? I hate you because you think differently. Because again, this is part of the strategy of these organizations that want to conquer, divide and conquer. This is the strategy. Divide and conquer. And people were infested with hatred. And I would tell my students, I said, something horrible is going to happen. It's just a matter of time. They'd say, what? I said, I don't know. But something very, very, very bad is going to happen from outside, from our enemies. Just watch. They said, how do you know this? Because the Torah tells me that. And the Torah is eternal. The Torah never lies. Our prophets never lied. They're always on spot. Always. We're just the dummies that think we know better. And October 7th happened. Even here, now, there's still some judicial reform things trying to happen, as well as now, what's the next flavor of the of the nonsense? What do you call it? Draft.
The draft law. The
draft
law.
law.
Right.
The people are trying to dodge this whole thing with being recruited to the army. The so-called Haredim. This is a big problem. This is a national problem from the point of view of them not wanting to go to the army. First of all, that's a national problem. They don't care. They don't see it that way. The majority of them are saying, I don't care. I'm not interested. I'm going to learn all day long. Give me my welfare check and have a good day. This has nothing to do with Torah, by the way. Nothing. This is not the manners of Torah. Nowhere. Nowhere does it even suggest just anywhere in the Talmud or anywhere in the Torah. As a matter of fact, in the Talmud, you had 2 points of view. One that actually said this, I'm going to study all day and God will provide. That's it, I don't care. And you had another side that says, no, you got to go work and you got to study Torah. Okay? They put both to the test. The one that says, I'm going to study Torah and work, both flourished. Their Torah and their finances. And the ones who said, I'm not going to work and only study, nothing flourished. They were poor, and their Torah was no good. This is Masekhet Berachot. Wherever they get this from, I'd rather not say, okay? But this is a big problem. And look what's going on. Again, divide and conquer. Hatred. Hatred. It's no good. Where are the rabbinic leaders? Why can't you see more broad? Why can't you try to find some common ground and say, we need to make changes, because we pretty much created 2 generations of welfare and a third is around the corner. This is no good. People who pay taxes, who work, are resentful by saying, what is this? I got to pay for your lives? I got to pay for your children? How can you do that? Mm-hmm. It is a form of theft, in my opinion, as well as, what are you giving back to the state? No army, no volunteering. They're not part of the workforce for them to also, pay through taxes, whatever it is, contribute. What are you contributing? I'm not saying all of them are like that, but a big bulk is like that. I can understand why people resent them. It's a big problem. I hope we're not going to have another disaster on our hands. I hope God should protect us from another disaster.
God willing, but like you said, we're marching again on that same path. So then a few things there, because the infighting, the disunity. Define unity then, because we're always going to have differences amongst people. Everybody has their own opinions. Everybody has a belief system in terms of what they think, how they think things should be, and how they think what we should believe in, and how we should practice, and what defines unity then. And then I'll go further and say also, during the time of the second Beit HaMikdash, is basically what you're describing is when Chachamim say that there's Sinat Chinam. Like this is Sinat Chinam is just the two words that summarize this entire 250-year period, essentially. Right?
Hatred.
So it starts as disagreements, and then it evolves.
There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with disagreeing, as long as we agree on what the goal is. How do we get there? We have to figure it out. That's okay. But when one side doesn't even want to hear about it, doesn't want to acknowledge that there's a problem, how can you have a conversation? The other side doesn't even want to recognize, they don't care that there's a problem. They don't care. They believe that the existence of the state is dependent on them studying all day. That's their contribution. And the other saying, but can we speak about reality and common sense? No. Can you demonstrate what you say that that's the case? Because I can demonstrate with me going to the army, with me contributing, with me working and paying taxes, and I can demonstrate to you what that does in reality, in real time. What can you show me demonstrates what you're saying that you're contributing by you studying Torah all day? Show me where there's a contribution in the society. I'm trying to find out. Are you going to tell me that maybe some of your people are going to be, volunteering and teaching Judaism in the schools of Israel? Okay, so that's a contribution. Are you going to tell me that they're going out to different organizations and volunteer? What are you doing that you learned all day? How are you putting it into practice? Besides your personal life, whatever, and I don't know what.
I mean, the argument that they make is that the learning is what protects Israel.
But again, demonstrate to me in real time. Exactly. So therefore,
because they're going to say it's beyond anything physical.
So you cannot have a conversation with that type of a person. It's as if I'm going to have a conversation about science, fact, science, atoms, this, that, real science, right? With some person from from the mountains of Peru, or a Papuan wizard.
Yeah.
Who doesn't believe? Who says science? No, I know what's real. Like pseudoscience. It's as if I'm going to have It's as if I'm going to have a conversation with a person who lived in the 21st century and a person living in the 14th century in Europe, where they can't have a conversation about facts, about science. They can't. Their brainwaves are completely off. They don't agree on reality. What is reality? If you're going to tell me reality, well, reality is time and space. Okay, let's demonstrate. How does that exactly work? Wonderful. And I'll ask a person who lives in some type of a mythological plane, what's reality? He'll tell you anything except time and space.
So then
it's the same concept.
Right. Okay.
So therefore, there can't be any. There's no dialogue here. We can't even agree to terms because the grounds. We can't even agree on the grounds and the terms of what's real or not.
Right. So okay. So then I guess at that point, it's what you're saying is that unity is really being able to level with each other on the same plane.
To start the conversation.
To even start a conversation.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what unity is.
That's first. That's required. That's what's required.
It's like, in my old age of 29, I've become more and more cynical.
Oh, wait till you're 50. But you always have as long as you have a sense of humor.
Yeah, but like you think about it.
It won't affect you that much.
I mean, the reason why I say that is because you think, okay, and when you become a student of history and you learn that the arguments and the disagreements and human nature and the psychology, like you always say, all of these things are the same.
Yeah, it's the same.
So how haven't we still figured it out?
Because we're arrogant.
But think about it.
Humanity is arrogant.
And we still can't get over that hump after thousands of years?
No.
So for some magic, it's like magic.
No.
It's like
It's
we
the
continue
same-
to fall under the same spell over and over
Yeah.
again, and we can't learn from the mistakes,
Because-
especially in a collective nature.
Because we say we know better. We'll try it again and differently. It's the same stupid argument that the modern socialists and communists now have. What do they
Sure.
tell you?
Right. Communism and socialism was never tried the right
The right
way.
way. We know better. No. They messed
So-
up. We're gonna demonstrate how perfect it is. Okay, delusional people.
Okay.
Okay.
So-
It's the same. It's the same way of thinking that, again, this is our ego. Why is it that it's so difficult for people to acquire wisdom? Only when you're later on in life you acquire it, because you went through it, you lived it. And one of the things that younger people very often don't take advice, don't take consultation from those who know better. I know better. You're old-fashioned. What do you know? You don't know anything. You don't live in my world. I might not live in a little tech world, which is, my opinion, a mythological world. But still, you're human. You have flaws. You have virtues. You have things that you need to be aware of, because it's the same formula. We are in God's game. The rules that He set, both in the physical universe and the morality universe, those are the rules. Those don't change. And when we start to tinker with any one of those things, it comes to smack us back hard, because we think we know better. We don't. Especially when it comes to let me revisit God's morals and codes. Let me see if I can come up with something better. Every time we did this as a human species, we got in so much trouble and people suffered. And usually the people who suffer the most are the common people. I'm going to read you another thing from Josephus.
Okay, so a little bit of background on Josephus as well.
Well, he was from a priestly family. He was born in Jerusalem. He comes from a lineage of a very prestigious family, very wealthy. First century of the Common Era. Had relations, of course, with even the Pharisees, the Chachamim. They knew him. They knew him. His history is a little complicated. You get some historians say that he betrayed the Jewish people, and some say no, he didn't betray the Jewish people. He was under a situation that he played both games in a sense. He played to Rome and he played to the Jews.
Like a
at the
double
same
agent.
time. He had to do that, according to his life.
It was his justification, right?
Now the funny thing is that if he was such a defector and hated Jews and all that, the Chachamim would not have relations with him when he was in Rome. There's a story of 4 Chachamim going to Rome as a delegation. I believe it's in Masekhet Sukkah. And Rabbi Eliezer Agadon and Rabbi Akiva were on a ship and all that, and then they reach Rome, and then one says to the other, Rabbi Yoshua was also one, and I think one of them says, let's go visit our good friend. I don't remember the name, the Hebrew name that they give him. It wasn't Josephus, but they said, let's go visit our good friend. And according to historians, they say this was Josephus who was living in Rome at that time, because they presented this as a delegation, and they, of course, wanted his counsel as to how to properly present themselves in front of the emperor and the governors and all that in order for them to be accepted.
Okay.
Let me read to you something that is amazing. Okay, let's see. Again, we're talking about these bandits, the zealots who were also bandits. Anybody who was a bandit became a zealot because they liked that lifestyle. They needed something, they go, they grab, they take whatever they want. Okay, no, lo din, lo dayan. They did whatever they wanted. Okay, robbing people, slandering people in order to make them as criminals so they can take what they have, to dispossess them. Horrible. Listen to this. At last, the people were ready for rebellion against the zealots instigated by Ananus, the eldest of the chief priests, because again, they were priests, they were leaders who were against them, and says we need to fight against them. What did they do? The Zealots had taken refuge in the temple of God and turned it into a fortress, making the holy place their headquarters. Basically, they desecrated the Beit HaMikdash. It wasn't the Romans who did this. We did this.
This was while the Beit HaMikdash was going to be destroyed. Like
No.
this was before.
This is about 30 to 50 years before.
So they just took over it.
Took over it.
Mm-hmm.
Why take over it? Because you have a lot of riches there.
Also,
You have food all the time.
it was also well fortified, right?
Very well fortified.
Right. Herod.
And people always respected it. They would not do a battle inside. They didn't care.
Right.
They didn't care. They pretended that according to ancient law, the high priest should be chosen by lot, although the succession was hereditary. Casting lots, the office fell on a coarse clown named Phani, who scarcely knew what the high priesthood meant, yet they dressed him in the sacred vestments and taught him how to act. This shocking impiety, which to them was a subject of merriment, drew tears from the other priests who grieved over the mockery of their law. Such outrage was more than the people could stand. It was a cause for bitter tears to see the votive offerings of the Romans at the temple on the one hand, and the spoils taken by their own countrymen on the other, who killed some of their own people, whom even the Romans would have spared. The Romans had never overstepped the limits at the temple, but those who called themselves Jews strolled freely inside the holy place, their hands still hot with the blood of their countrymen. No good. So yes, we usually, very often, we blame Rome. Okay, yeah, all right. At the same time, we are also to blame. We started a whole brew of things that unfortunately led to the catastrophe. And I'm going to get to the point where eventually the temple is destroyed by Titus, right, who was the son of the emperor Vespasian, yeah. Okay. One second. Let me see if I find. There was corruption also among the priesthood. So reckless were the high priests in the use or rather abuse of their power, they would send their slaves armed with clubs to the barns to seize for themselves the tithes, which everyone was legally free to give to whichever priest he might select. Those priests who had not the good fortune to be related to the high priest were thus deprived of the means of sustenance and fell into stringent poverty. The temple was despoiled by its dignitaries even before the enemy forced his way into it with the weapons of his murder.
Right.
We did horrible things. We defiled it. Now this also happened, by a side point, in the time of the first temple. If you read the books of Kings, okay, Sefer Melachim,
Right.
there were some horrible things going on in the first temple. Depending who the emperor was, obviously, who the king was. They allowed Avodah Zarah inside the temple. They allowed statues of Phoenician and Canaanite gods in the temple being worshipped. Murder happened in the temple. Religious prostitutes were also part of the temple service at one point. To us today, this sounds so exaggerated. This sounds crazy. To them, it wasn't. I thought of an amazing point on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
I was learning with Raphael something in Hilchot Teshuvah in chapter 6, where Rambam demonstrates there seems to be pesukim that convey or imply as if we humans don't have freedom of choice, and he demonstrates that that's not the case. It has to be properly understood.
Mm-hmm.
He brings the pasuk that Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Jewish people. He says, I know when you're going to go into the land of Israel, you're going to become corrupt, you're going to fail, you're going to start worshiping idols and all that.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds as if this is a decree. It's like they have no choice.
Right.
But the way to understand it He's basically saying, it's probable that you will.
Right.
Okay? What does that mean? How do I understand, and I take it to the next step? Understanding that in the land of Israel, you had different worships. The worship that was almost, if not identical to our worship, was Canaanite worship. The rituals, the different sacrifices. You couldn't tell the difference between Canaanite and a Jew if you're just watching them do their worship of sacrifice. What is Moshe saying? Okay, in his own way. You're not going to know the difference, so you're just going to follow them and their God. Because why is it? What is it about paganism and idolatry that's so attractive? Not so much the ritual, the visual. Our vision is our strongest sense of all our five senses. Our vision usually tells us what's real, what's not. Our vision does not require us to even process. Our ears need to process. This is words.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
Very often we're duped by our vision.
Sure.
Very often. So for the ancient mind to believe in a deity that you can't even see, that was something absurd. Really, really absurd. And even the Greeks and the Romans would make fun of us and say, you believe in a God that's invisible, he can't be real, because everything is about the visual. So you can understand now why the Jewish people later on kept on succumbing to the pagan ways. Because the ritual is so very much the same, as well as, I can actually see my God, who is represented in this image, in this physical being. Okay. Now you can understand also why is it that very often God gets upset and the prophets keep telling the people, stop worshiping God, stop putting your worshiping altars on mountains and hills. You know why? Because that's what the Canaanites did. What did they tell the people? Come to Shiloh. Come to where the Mishkan is. And later on the Beit HaMikdash. So you don't associate with them when it has to do with this worship. That makes total sense. So what Moshe is saying, it's not a decree by God.
No.
He's saying it's likely that this is going to happen because of who the people are. Okay? Another thing. He brings another pasuk. The famous pasuk where God tells Abraham, I'm going to tell you something. I want you to know that your descendants are going to be in a different land, in a foreign land, and they're going to be enslaved. Sounds like a decree that this had to happen.
Right.
Right. So the Egyptians had no freedom of choice? Of course they had freedom of choice.
The Jews also.
They don't have to go down.
They didn't have to go down. Yaakov Avinu didn't have to go down.
They didn't have to go down.
Right.
Who said that the brother had to sell Yosef? What triggered the whole thing? How do I understand that? Again, I think I don't think I've ever read anyone saying this, because I was thinking about it throughout a few days. How could that happen? If we understand how were foreigners treated in their non-native land, it makes perfect sense. You first come, foreigners, suspicion. Point blank, doesn't matter who you are, you're suspected. Now, we need to subjugate you in order to make sure you're not going to be a threat to us. That was common practice in the entire ancient world. The only reason why, that the Jewish people were not enslaved initially is because of Yosef. Once he dies,
the protection is out. Yeah.
And that's exactly what the Torah says. When all those people died that came, Melech Hadash.
Asher lo yadat Yosef.
Yeah. You see that?
Yeah.
So it's not that God decrees that. It's just that how do things usually play out in history, in human behavior? In all likelihood, it is going to play out again.
Yeah. It's a natural consequence based on our track record.
So the same thing here. What did they expect? You guys are having all this internal fighting, all this immorality, horrible hatred. Okay? Violence, desecrating the Bet HaMikdash. Even Titus, I'm going to read to you what Titus says before he enters, and he says, I didn't do this.
Right.
I mean, it's fascinating.
Right, because it is fascinating because, I mean, another point that is also so important to remember is that before the Romans, once the Romans started the siege, the people were trying to get out of the old city.
They didn't let them.
The Zealots would not let them. But not just that, the Zealots also would burn, if I'm not mistaken, they burned all like the storage of the grain,
correct.
of the food supply to say, we're staying, we're not going anywhere, we're fighting, and kind of coercing the people to fight against the Romans, and then the Romans did their thing. Yeah. So you can only imagine the type of calamity and conditions that was going on within the walls of the old city itself.
Horrible.
Right.
Horrible. Whenever they needed some food, they would go to people's homes and just take and do whatever they want. And people were terrified from them. The common people were terrified from them.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, the Zealots and the Idumean were a people that lived right south of Jerusalem. Okay, they weren't Jews, but they were allowed to live in that territory, and in general, things were good with them. And sometimes they fought against Rome with us. Sometimes they were duped. The Zealots duped them to fight with them together, by the way. Okay. So listen to this. The Zealots and the Idumean hordes now butchered the people as if they were a herd of unclean animals, while youths of noble birth they threw into prison, hoping some would join their party. Not one, however, listened to their proposals, all preferring to die rather unite with these felons against their country. They were scourged, racked, tortured, and finally killed. 12,000 of the young nobility and their relatives did not dare to weep openly for them, but only behind closed doors. Again, he has here a few pages of what they would do. The Zealots roared, and 2 of them rushed over and killed Zacharias in the middle of the temple, jesting over his prostrate body. And he was a distinguished citizen. Again, they took the people who had influence and told them, you're either on our side or you're done. Again, horrible things. What he brings here. Listen to this. Rome. Smart. Hearing of the dissensions inside Jerusalem, many of the Roman officers urged Vespasian to attack the city. He replied that this would instantly reunite the Jews against the common enemy. Isn't that the same thing what would happen in October 7th? Suddenly we were all reunited. The fervor of unification.
Right.
Look at that. If, however, they were left alone, they would go on destroying each other and give the Romans an easy victory. God was a better general than he, Vespasian continued, and was conferring victory on the Romans without risk. Nothing's changed.
I mean, gotta give credit where credit's due.
Absolutely. If they're killing each other, fine, let them.
Yeah. Right.
This is common. This is also something common.
Right. I mean, if your enemy is killing themselves, just let them continue doing their thing. Yeah, no, for sure. It's a very reasonable strategy, especially if you're not expending resources.
Yeah.
Right. But what's fascinating also is that during that time, the Chachamim, and this was the hope, right? The Chachamim saw what was going on, and eventually they couldn't stop it. But the way that they pivoted in order to save Am Yisrael with the story of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai playing dead, you have Rabbi Yeshua.
It wasn't him.
It wasn't Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai? I thought it was.
I know it is. In the Talmud,
it says that it's him.
It's a legend.
Right, but
it's not him. You know who it is? Josephus.
It was. How do we know this?
Based on history. Now, interestingly enough, you remember the story that of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, that when he took him out, he saw the emperor and he saw the general and he called him my emperor.
Yes.
It was Josephus. And Vespasian remembered that. Because he didn't understand. Why call him emperor? And then later on, when Vespasian became emperor, He released Josephus from prison because of that. He says, I remembered.
Well,
We have to understand, the Talmud, again, is not a book of history.
a lot of historical records in there, though. One would
It's
claim.
not historical per se, like we understand it. It's more ahistorical. Ahistorical.
Mm.
And they take situations and they take characters and they re-narrate it in order to teach us a lesson, in order to teach us about something. To say in the Talmud, when they're saying Rabbi ben Zakkai, it's of course, oh, Kohen Gadol, blah, blah, blah. But Josephus, okay.
But Ten Yavneh, but the whole idea of Yavneh, that was Josephus? That wasn't Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai?
No. The whole thing of Yavneh also, again, when we're saying it was only him, it was not only him. There was a delegation. Do you really think? When you start to read this more thoroughly,
Mm-hmm.
it sounds a little ridiculous to say that Titus, because Vespasian was in Rome. Okay, he wasn't even there. Titus was there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was the general. He was really in charge of everything, right? And do you really think that after this whole thing, this fiasco was going on in Judea and these rebels and all that, let me give a territory to these Jews so they can do whatever they want. You want to study? Hold on a second. Isn't it true that this whole balagan began because of an ideology? What is study if not also ideology?
Mm-hmm.
We got to see it again. We got to see it from the lens of both history, and again at the same time, what are Chachamim are trying to bring here and to convey? Yavneh eventually we know that Yavneh eventually it got demolished. So what? So Titus is going to say, okay, so let me wait. No, he wanted this over.
Yeah.
When you start to read this, it's like he doesn't want to prolong this. It's a balagan. This was a mess for Rome. It really was. Thousands and thousands of Roman soldiers were massacred.
Also true.
They want to say, we're done here. We're done.
Right. It kept popping up.
It kept popping up. Well, I'm
Right.
going to give these people a place to study so they can what? Come up with another ideology against us. And guess what? That's what happened with Bar Kokhba.
Right. I mean, it's funny you're saying that because I guess thinking about it more thoroughly, taking the next steps, right? Rome also prohibited Torah study. Rome
Down the
prohibited-
road.
Down the road.
Not here.
Not yet.
Not here. Not yet.
Not
That's
yet,
later.
but they started imposing harsher restrictions on the Jews in order to curb it.
To get back at us also.
To get back at us, right, and also just to curb any sort of other uprising. But I mean, eventually it worked against them, and there were uprisings.
But eventually worked against us. We were
Right.
decimated.
Right, we were decimated. We were completely destroyed. Right? I mean, yeah, it really sums up Sinat Chinam, if you really think about it. And Chachamim, in 2 words, really put the entire.
They don't care
history.
about the whole history. They're just telling you,
What's
this is it.
What's the punchline?
This is it.
But where do you think?
In order for us to be aware, and again, the whole point of it is in order for us to be aware of it throughout the course of our generations. It's going to creep up again. Look at the results.
So what's the antidote? If you were now to give advice to Am Yisrael, what's the antidote?
Find compromise. But find compromise, and everybody has to give up something. To compromise, you got to give up something. Should we give up our Torah and our mitzvot? No. Should we give up certain things that we can say, we have some gray area? We have gray area. Let's figure out some gray area. Can we agree upon an objective and a goal of what we're trying to accomplish?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there can be a dialogue. No one has all the answers, but if things don't change, it's only going to lead to more bad things in the course of our history.
Mm-hmm.
No one, I'm not saying everybody has to keep Torah, halakha. No, it never was throughout the course of our history. Never. Am Yisrael never kept everything. We never did. Okay, so, but can we agree that certain things are very good on a national scale for us? And whatever you want to do personally in your own home, that's fine. But can we agree on the bigger picture? Definitely there are certain mitzvot that, oh boy, these definitely bring closer unity. Let's focus on those at least.
Right.
This was the thing, the Shita of Chacham Uziel.
Okay. Who's Chacham Uziel?
Chacham Uziel was the first chief Sephardic rabbi of the state of Israel, but he was also chief rabbi of Tel Aviv. Born, 1870s? I don't know. And he died in the early 1950s. You can tell me. He was from the Turkish rabbinical families, very, very well known. And he saw the differences. He saw the changes. He saw what's coming, and he always said, always try to pursue peace and truth and love. Find a way, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to stay here and be accomplished and to flourish, or else we're gonna destroy each other again.
Yeah, Hamuziel here. I'll read a little bit about his biography. He was born in Yerushalayim on May 23rd, 1880, with deep rabbinical lineage. His father was the Av Bet Din of the Sephardic community in Jerusalem, as well as the president of community council. At 20, he became a teacher, and he founded yeshiva called Masekhet Tora, specifically for young Sephardic men. 1911, he was appointed as Chacham Bashi of Yafa, Tel Aviv, and he developed a very close relationship with Rav Kook, right? And it's known they were very close with each other. He in 2021 went to Thessalonica, Greece, and he became
not 2021.
1921. Thank you. So in 1921, he accepted a temporary post as a chief rabbi of Salonika in Greece for 3 years, and then he came back to Tel Aviv to become the chief rabbi of Tel Aviv in 1923. Mm-hmm. And then in 1939, he was unanimously appointed as the Sephardic chief rabbi of Israel, first the British Mandate and then eventually Israel. He founded a Yesharet Zion Yeshiva, founded and had a hand in founding Porat Yosef. I mean, he's also known for being the teacher of the golden generation of Chachamim, right? Whether it's Chacham Zion Levi, or Chacham Shelush, or Chacham Chaim David Halevi as well.
Right.
Chacham Ovadia was also in the mix and was influenced by Chacham Uziel also, right? So, and like you said, he always emphasized trying to find the bridges between common ground, Sephardim, Ashkenazim, and recognized that he recognized there were differences, but even non-observant and even non-observant.
Yes. The ones who were less observant, I'm going to say, and the ones who really had very little background with Judaism and all that. He was always cordial with everybody.
Right.
But again, today, unfortunately, there's a lack of cordiality.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Right.
It's not good. It's become camps. It's become like a sense of tribalism. It's become like these factions. It's my ideology and nothing else. This is not the Jewish people. This is not Am Yisrael. This is not who we are. This is not. We took this. We took this way of thinking from others, I guess, and now adopted it to us. Stop with the labels. Mm-hmm. We're one nation. So let's stop with the labeling all the time. Labeling. Whatever you do in your home, that's your problem. That's your own thing. But you're still a Jew and you observe whatever you can. I don't understand. What is the difference between a person who's Shomer Torah mitzvot, right? Shomer Torah mitzvot. I follow Shulchan Aruch, I follow Halakha to the best of my ability and very devoted. And a person Haredi. What does that even mean? Because you dress in a certain way. That? You follow the same books. Sephardic. You have Sephardic person A, follow Harav Yosef. He follows him, pretty much. 90%. Okay, great. You have another guy, he follows Chacham Yosef. 90%. They do the same thing. Okay? One is Dati, quote unquote. One is Haredi. What's the difference between the two? Except the one who is so-called Dati, right? He dresses modern, whatever it is. Doesn't necessarily have to have a beard. But the other guy, he dresses with a black suit and a white shirt all the time. And he has a hat and a beard. But you're observing identical. Your observance is identical. You go to the same Bet Knesset. You pray in the same suit. It's the same nosach. It's the same tunes even. Why are you calling yourself Haredi? Why? Because it makes you better? I'm sorry. But all these sickening labels, when it comes to the so-called people who are observant, forget the ones who are not. The observant ones, they're sickening. What are you doing? Holier than thou. I'm superior than you. Where the heck do you get this in the Torah? Where do you get this in halakha? Where do you get this? Not from those sources. It comes from outside sources. Unfortunately, as we said in the past, all organisms are affected by their environment. Mm-hmm. We Jewish people, we lived among others with a different faith, in particular Catholicism, that had the same type of hierarchies when it came to their level of observance and religiosity, quote unquote. That's where this comes from. Holier than thou. Better than you. I'm holier. I do more. I do this. So therefore, I'm in this category. And I'm in this category. So therefore, I'm in a different slot this year. Tomorrow, I'm in a different slot. And I'm better than you. This has nothing to do with the Torah. This has to do with the hierarchy of the church. That's where. And it's sad, unfortunately, that we Jewish people succumbed to this lunacy. It's lunacy. What are we doing? So, yes, we're going to, on Thursday, Wednesday night and Thursday, Beit HaMikdash, we're crying. Stop crying and start fixing. Stop with this nonsense. We're crying about the Beit HaMikdash. No, you're not. No, you're not, because most people are clueless of what the Beit HaMikdash was. No one knows today. What does it mean to have Beit HaMikdash? Well, it was always beautiful and pure. Look what they did to the Beit HaMikdash. Look what we did to our own Beit HaMikdash. Because of this behavior and how we viewed each other this way. And funny, this was mainly political. I think religiosity is more fervor than political.
So then what? So then what do you reflect on during Tisha BeAv then?
The sad state of how we don't know how to get along. Ultimately, that's what it really is about. It's not about a building. It really isn't. It's about how did we profane our sanctity? We forgot God. And we only thought about ourselves and our ideology. But we forgot God.
Yeah.
Let me read another couple of things.
Yeah.
This is already when things were really bad inside Jerusalem. All hope of escape and all food supplies were now cut off from the Jews. And famine devoured thousands upon thousands. The alleys were choked with bodies, the survivors not having enough strength to bury the dead, and even falling into graves with them. No mourning was heard in Jerusalem, for famine stifled all emotions, and an awful silence shrouded the city. The rebels at first ordered the bodies buried at public expense, finding the stench unbearable, but then flung them into the ravines when they became too numerous. Look what Titus said. When Titus, as he made his rounds, saw these valleys choked with dead bodies, oozing decay, he groaned and lifted up his hands, called God to witness that this was not his doing. We did this to ourselves, unfortunately.
That's wild.
Again, most people don't know these histories. I think it's very important, in order for us to be aware of it, to learn from this and say, we can't go down this path. And
Right. I mean, I'll push back a little bit and say that an argument against your criticism against what you're saying is that it sounds kind of like you're justifying what the Romans eventually did, right? Because we're pointing the finger only at ourselves. You're only pointing the finger. We did this to ourselves. We did this to ourselves. Titus is lifting his arms and saying, God, it wasn't me, it was them. Well, what am I supposed to do? It's them. They did it to themselves.
But we did. I'm sorry, but I recall in our Chumash, in the covenant we have with God, that when we mess up, calamities are going to befall upon us. That's the covenant we have with God. We don't like it. Why? Because we have to take blame and maybe do teshuvah and change. Oh, and that's hard. So, you want to self-destruct again? Go ahead. God says, go ahead. How many times did we try the formula that we thought is better than what the Torah says, and we always failed? It's just a matter of time. It's all it is. It's all a matter of time that the covenant is going to show us in our faces and say, well, we have to have another conversation again. You forgot the words that you read last parasha. I'm going to say something horrible.
Oh boy.
Whenever I start this type of a sentence, it ain't good.
No.
And it's something that I know is going to make people uncomfortable. But how else are we going to change if we don't start being uncomfortable? When we read the Sefer Torah in the synagogue, how often are we really paying attention to the words? I would say in general. Depending on the minyan you're in.
Yeah.
Okay, depending. As well as even if you're in a minyan, that there is quiet. All right, and the person is reading. Okay, so they're reading. Okay, so I'm reading. I'm seeing it. How often are we internalizing this? Unless you stop on your own, not in a synagogue. Unless you're doing it on your own in the synagogue, and you're not paying attention to the reader. Are you really focusing hard on the words and seeing how God is speaking to us all the time? He's always talking to us. God is always talking to us. We need to be prophets. I tell my students, ask me, how come God doesn't talk to us anymore? How come God, I go to him, 1 second. I go, take this book. They take a chumah. I go, take it. I go, open up anywhere you want. They open it. I said, God is speaking to you right now. Right now. He's talking to you. Not to anyone, to you. They're taken aback. I said, we don't need prophets anymore. We got it all. We got it all. And even though we got it all, we still, on purpose, very often, neglect. Who needs more prophets? So we can hate them more? So, I was at a couple, I was at one place this Shabbat where I prayed Shachrit, and then the reader was reading. He's a very good reader, by the way. It's the second time I heard him. He reads very nicely, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, he's good. He's very nice. And again, you don't get that often. Good reader. Clear. Okay, great. But meanwhile, people all around me, just talking, loud, not even having the common courtesy of the person who's reading. So they missed out on what God told them. God is telling them about the covenant. In the first chapter, in the first parasha of the book of Devarim, which is really the reiteration of the whole covenant. And then we complain. Why doesn't God listen to us? God says, did you listen to me? Did you bother listening to me? Our covenant with God is a two-way street. It's a two-way thing. It's not only us and him. It's not only him and us. It's together. We got to work together. So I think it's beyond critical that when we are hearing the Torah being read in the Bet Knesset, or let's say I'm reading the Torah, whatever it is, to pause and to really internalize the words that God is telling me, and to do our best to live by it. Do our best to live by it, both in the mitzvot angle, but also in the bigger picture. What are we trying to accomplish? Because the Torah ultimately is trying to accomplish us as a nation in the land of Israel at a certain plateau. That's what it's trying to do. And again, it's persuasive, it's suggestive. This is it. And the more we apply things that it tells us in the right way, not as attacking, not as weapons, not as dividing, but uniting, things will get better. Because the thing is, I find it that the more conversations we have with people, honestly, civil, of course, the more we agree on many more things that we think we disagree. We agree on way more than we disagree. As long as we're civil to each other and care pretty much about the same important things in our lives, yeah, it's not too complicated. Is it challenging? Yeah. So? But the rebels only shouted curses. Oh. They rushed in arms around the holy places and shocked even the Roman soldiers by their impiety. Again, Titus rebuked John and his followers, with the Zealots. Wasn't it you, abominable wretches, who placed this balustrade in front of your sanctuary? It was with slabs in Greek and in your own language, warning that no one may pass the barrier? And didn't we allow you to put to death anyone who passed it, even if he were a Roman? Why then do you now trample corpses underfoot within it? I call the gods of my father to witness, and any deity who once guarded this place, for now I believe there is none. I call on the army, the Jews within my ranks, and on yourselves, to witness that it is not I who forced you to pollute these precincts. Fight in any other place, and no Roman shall profane your holy places. Rather, I will save the sanctuary for you, even against your will. Titus was asking the rebels, let's fight, fine. You want to do a battle? Let's do a battle. Why? But not in the temple, not in the precinct of the temple. You're profaning the temple. Isn't this funny?
It's very wild.
I'll tell you something funny. If a non-Jewish person, let's say a devout Muslim or a devout Christian, would walk into some of our minyanim on Shabbat and just sit here, they would be shocked. They'd say, why are people all talking and socializing? Why are people drinking coffee in the middle of the prayers? And they're right. Sometimes we feel too casual in a holy place, in a sacred place, in a Bet Knesset, and we lose our behavior. How can we behave this way? How can we profane something that's sacred? It's not a club. It's not a social club. Finish the tefillah, walk outside and talk as much as you want. Have your little kiddush outside. You're bringing tequila shots in the Bet Knesset, like I saw last week, in a place where I went, and beef jerky inside the Bet Knesset. I'm saying, I can't believe this. Tequila shots. And there are children there. So what do you expect the children to do when they become teenagers? Why is it that my kid doesn't pray, doesn't care? He doesn't want to come to Bet Knesset. You know why? Because you desecrated the place. You made it not important anymore. Then why should he come? You didn't demonstrate to him that this is a special place, that it's important. You did this. We need to do better. We need to do better because we know better. Baruch Hashem, we know better. A side note, during the time that Rome and the Judeans and Jews became more acquainted with each other, this was something fascinating. Just like in the time of the Greeks, many Greeks converted to Judaism, many Romans converted to Judaism also. Who in particular? Women. Roman women of wealth, dignitaries, like of status, many of them converted to Judaism, including some sisters of emperors. Fascinating. Why? they appreciated the gentleness, care of how we're supposed to treat each other, how we're supposed to take care of our kids, morality. Like they saw enormous value in this, and many women converted to Judaism, Roman women. There were people who saw that as suspect. No, they want something out of it, more rigid. Who in particular? The school of Shammai.
Right. They thought there was an ulterior motive.
And they didn't like it that, a lot of these women are now going to be part of our lineage, because they were big into lineage, by the way, because there were also many of them from the Kehuna, from the priesthood. Now you can understand why in the late 1st century you had a convening of Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel to pass the 18 decrees that many of them had to do with non-Jews. Their wine, bread, oil, vessels, so many things. And many of them say Mishum Hatnut, because of intermarriage. There you go. And guess what? They were able to overrule the Hillelites, who were more lenient, and they tried they were able to overrule them with their votes. They had the upper hand, and you had those 18 decrees that were passed.
Yeah, let me see if I can find them.
Fascinating.
That's interesting.
Because it was a problem. It was an issue. Right? So what do we learn, in my opinion, from a lot of this is that we are our worst enemies. The Romans, the Greeks, the Babylonians, the church, whoever you want, are just tools, really tools, in order to pay retribution to what we did against the covenant with God, as well as alert us that the covenant is still alive. So even though we were decimated, for us that's proof that the covenant was alive. Why? Because we were not fulfilling it properly, especially when it came to the basic moral code, the basics, the basic way of how are we going to deal with each other when it comes to disagreement. What, we're going to loot each other and going to kill each other? What is that?
It's ironic that was the proof the covenant's still alive.
That is, by the way, for the church fathers, for them, because we were decimated, for them that was proof that the covenant was annulled by God.
Right.
But for us, we said, no, it's just proof that it's still alive because we messed up. Yes, Rome was evil to us.
Yeah.
They were.
Yeah.
But it did not happen overnight. The hatred between Rome and us was not something overnight. It was triggered by different things. It was also triggered by us, by our different factions.
Yeah.
It was a certain element of Rome saying, how is it that these bands of nut jobs are able to constantly bring us down?
Yeah.
They had to also make a stand at the same time in order for this not to be an example for other peoples to do the same thing. We fought Rome like nobody fought Rome. Again, it wasn't we, it was these people. It was these zealots. It wasn't the whole nation. It wasn't like the Jews of the north. They were not involved in this.
That was later on. That was during the Bar Kokhba time, right?
No, it was also the Judeans mainly. Yeah, some Jews later on from
battles.
the north, they
Yeah,
came in.
there were battles that started, and then because the Romans had to make their way
Yeah.
down, there were battles.
But it was that ideology.
Yeah.
It was that ideology. So yes, we should be mournful. Of course, horrible things happened to our people, to our nation, to our state. Of course, we were stateless for 1900 years, close to 1900 years. But now that we're back, we need to make sure that we don't repeat this.
Yeah. And God willing,
The more divided we are, the more vulnerable we are for the enemy to come and take us and to overtake us. That's the nature of the world, because the nature of the world is the law of the jungle. That's the nature of the world.
Right. I mean, listen, we don't have to go so far in history. It happened, like you
No.
said, it happened a year and a half ago.
2 years,
Almost 2
two and
years
a
now.
half years.
2.5 years. Yeah, 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
We don't have to go that far back.
And what's the turning point, which I find amazing, is that after October 7th that happened, many Jewish people, not only they united, but many Jewish people in Israel and abroad, they said, I need to strengthen my Jewish identity with something that has to do with the Torah and the mitzvot.
They started seeing it more, for sure.
Yeah. It's the first time that in such big numbers, really, this affected them to come back to the Torah and the mitzvot. Really.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a movement in a sense.
Yeah, it's an awakening.
An awakening. It is.
Yeah,
And hopefully we don't need to be awakened with catastrophes.
God willing.
We should only be awakened by the Torah that God speaks to us, by the wonderful abundance, His blessings, His constant kindness and care all the time. If we're aware of it, we're not going to learn from the bad things. We're only going to benefit from the beautiful things that He's always doing to us.
God willing. On that note, Baruch Adonai Le'olam.
Amen v'amen.
Amen v'amen.